Good afternoon and welcome back to the first of its kind, the Chaos and Calm podcast. It's the first because it's the first time I've decided to put my face on anything and actually launch it via a YouTube channel. And I'm really honoured and pleased to be joined by my very first guest today, Jessie, who has come to tell us a little bit about how we got to meet, what the purpose of the podcast is about today. And as I said, it's the very first. So for the Chaos and Calm listeners, please bear with us. I can't promise no technical issues. Unfortunately, you'll be able to see my response if there is one, whereas usually you can't. So yeah, we'll just see how we get on. So Jessie, tell us a little bit about yourself first. Hi.
Jessie. My little boy Otis he's perfect, but other than that, he's autistic. He has a learning disability. He's non-verbal and he's got SPD. He's the reason for all of this starting.
For all of this. So I first got introduced to you because you reached out to the amazing open air bounce, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In Overholton, that a massive supporter of what I'm trying to do. And in fact, the trailblazers, in my personal opinion, because they go above and beyond to produce the Send sessions that we create, and she's always thinking out of the box. I was hoping that she could join us on this podcast today, but unfortunately she's not been able to. So you reached out to them and asked for some help, is that right?
Yeah, so originally I saw the SEN days that they do.
Yes.
And I booked one for Otis. It got rescheduled a couple of times because they've had a nightmare, haven't they, with the weather? But what I loved about it and why I booked was it was partly because they've had the training side of things as well. Because I think a lot of people, they put their Send sessions on and they're not really Send sessions. They're kind of just doing it to tick a box to say they're being inclusive. Whereas the fact that they've done the training and the things I'd heard about the sessions and how well they was running because of that, I booked that for Otis. And then when I wanted to do the fundraiser, they're the first place I kind of thought of and messaged, and they've been brilliant.
Yeah, she's fantastic, Sarah, isn't she? So it was me that actually delivered the training to the staff. Sarah reached out, over a year now, and said she wanted to put Send sessions on, but she wanted to do them the correct way. So she wanted to invest in doing them the correct way, which meant that all the staff had to have a really good understanding of what SEN was. And I just wish so many other companies would take her lead, because ultimately, it's transpired that these sessions are sold out every single time, aren't they, whenever the Send sessions are put on. Weather permitting, that is, because you can't do it in the rain. So you reached out to Sarah to help you with your so are you a charity, Jessie?
No, so I'm doing this through, so the money that we make from the fundraiser will go through the hospital's charity. But it's to fund a specific pot called the Otis Project.
Right,
So anything raised through that will go into this pot, which is for making the changes I've asked for.
Right, okay. Yeah. So tell us how your story started at Wigan Hospital, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was over 2 years ago now. It was after a few bad experiences throughout the trust, but particularly A&E. Obviously, as you know, taking a child to hospital is the worst.
Traumatic.
But, you add in additional needs and, other things. It's a lot more difficult.
Well, you've got waiting times, haven't you? And obviously, historically, our children do not like to wait. They don't like to sit quietly. And, things can escalate very, very quickly from nothing, can't they? And then add in the fact that you're in an A&E department just doesn't bear thinking about.
One of Otis's triggers is babies crying. So as you can imagine, that's going on a lot in an A&E department.
Yeah, definitely.
So there was a few experiences, but mainly it just highlighted the lack of sort of understanding and the resources. It just wasn't being picked up that there was a need for maybe a separate space for them to wait. Or, I got asked what he had on his ears, because he wears ear defenders, which I would have thought that staff at a hospital were aware of. So a member of
staff asked you that?
Yeah.
Really?
What he's on his ears? Yeah.
In an A&E department?
Yeah,
Wow.
One of the doctors, yeah. And obviously then I had to sit and explain why he had them on. And the reason you're there is because there's a medical need. So you don't want to be,
Explaining
and
why he's got ear
educating.
defenders. I
Yeah.
find that really shocking, Jessie,
I know.
I mean, I know it goes on a lot in kind of like soft play centres and things like that.
Yeah.
They're at a level where they'll come in to contact intermittently, whether
Yeah.
they choose to, with children with SEN. But for a professional in a hospital,
Yeah.
I find that quite disturbing, actually, that they don't know what ear defenders are.
I know, I did too. I know a lot of the things that Otis struggled with, other than the wait inside and being in that room, was
Yeah.
it was sort of normal practice. I say this. So, for example, your ear thermometers.
Yes.
So they just lift his ear defenders up and try and take his temperature, and without asking or understanding that actually that's a huge trigger to lift that.
Yeah. Well, it's letting in all those sensory sensitivities, isn't it?
Exactly.
By doing that. So did they not, were there no adjustments, no reasonable adjustments made the moment that obviously you identified and told them that he's autistic?
No. So I've also never been asked how Otis communicates. Now, with Otis, he doesn't use, I mean, we just started with the iPad as a talker, but it's very slow, and he doesn't obviously speak. So, I mean, I know that if they'd asked how he communicates, I would have said, he can't verbally communicate. He doesn't really have a way, but you need to speak through me. And I think the overriding feeling was that if I had a little boy who was sat there and he could say it hurts here, or things are taken more seriously, whereas the amount of times I've heard he doesn't look like he's in pain because he's, flapping his hands, or he's
stimming.
Yeah, exactly. So all of his stims now, I'm so in tune with it that if he's stimming in a particular way or more than usual, they're my kind of little clues that something's different. But trying to explain that to someone who's like, but he looks fine because he's flapping his hands, and they didn't have that understanding of like, well, actually, his mum sat there saying that something's wrong, and it was that for me. I felt like, because he couldn't speak, he wasn't being treated equally. I wasn't being listened to. I've been asked, is this your first child? I can't tell you how many times. You always look like the over worrying parent to them. There was just so many things that it highlighted to me, and I knew that things needed to change. So I took to PALS. The last kind of the bit that tipped me over, I was already, I wanted change, but we went into A&E, but we went through a different department side. We still saw the doctor. Otis, the only reason I knew he had a ear infection. I hadn't known for days. The only reason I knew was because I just saw blood coming out of his ear.
Oh my God.
The whole run up to that, there'd been no sign of Otis being poorly. He can't verbally tell me my ear hurts, So as soon as I saw that, we took him in. The doctor needed to check in his ear, which I understand.
Yes.
He started to shout, like, granted, it started as a speaking, saying, take your ear defenders off. And then it gradually got higher and higher to the point where he was then shouting at Otis, and just intervene and say, stop shouting at him. And the reason, I think he was like mistaking his lack of understanding for that he was just being ignorant and not listening to him, when in actual fact Otis doesn't understand what he was
autistic.
saying.
He's autistic. I mean, this is the first I've not had the opportunity for you to tell me your story yet, and I was waiting for this point in time to get a better understanding of what's led you to this point in time. I speak to a lot of parents that are looking for help and support via Mysensability, but it tends to be around education rather than mainstream education, rather than around a hospital. But, there's that perception that you're going into a place that looks after children, takes care of children and adults.
Yeah.
And for them to have such a lack of understanding of what special educational needs actually is additional needs that a doctor is shouting at a child that is nonverbal. Children who are autistic, who are nonverbal, can only communicate via their behaviour. And that's one of the stresses as a parent, is that you pretty much have to be able to read invisible signals, don't you?
Yeah, 100%.
We're not asking them to go to that extent because they don't know your child as well as we do. Or we know our child better than anybody, don't we? But it's just investing, and that's a frustrating thing for me, is just investing that little bit of time to try and understand the basics of what SEN is. And if they did that, then you wouldn't have been placed in that situation.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I came home from that, and that was just kind of the tip.
You were traumatized a bit. I think you're better than me, because I would have tried to take the physician.
Well, I did say, I said
I would have tried to take him out, literally.
Yeah. I think you just don't. I was quite shocked, to be honest.
Yeah.
I had to say, stop, you know. But I mean, I've had just so many different scenarios like that where it's the understanding just isn't there. And I mean, I came home and I say it to every medical professional I speak to and everything throughout this, but as parents to children who are neurodiverse or have disabilities, you fight for everything as their parent.
You do.
And I just do not think that equal access to healthcare should be one of them things we have to fight for.
No.
I mean, I am one of these parents, as well as so many others I've spoken to, where you sat debating, and it could be an emergency, but you sat debating whether or not to take your child to A&E because you know that they're not going to be able to cope, and it's not, you know, it's not set up for them. When you should just be suddenly getting them in the car and going.
Yeah. And then you're in a situation, it's like, is this going to cause them more harm than good? But I need my child to be seen. And I think for me, what speaks volumes is the fact that when you've highlighted to them, they're not taking you into consideration. You know your child best. And you're saying, I know there is something wrong. So that should be enough that they listen and they take that into consideration. You know, I've had bad experiences when I've been to A&E. I've been told I had one thing and I had a completely other, and ended up in hospital for about a week. I couldn't get out. It was like being in prison, literally. But I'm an adult. I can communicate. I can speak. We have to speak on behalf of our children. So, you know, we should be listened to. I find it quite worrying, actually. And I say this on a lot of the podcasts that I do and a lot of the parents I speak to. We know what, you know, years ago, autism was that boy that, you know, in my instance, that used to walk around in, you know, 30 degrees heat around the playground with his hood up and a parka on. He was clearly had an additional need. We've named it now. We know what it is, but we're still a million miles away, which is what makes me sad, from people actually understanding what that means. We know we've given it nice names like neurodiversity and neurodiverse, but actually, as a society, are we any further on actually understanding what that means, what the implications of that, what the behaviours are of that, how we can help that family, that parent? I don't think so. And that's why, you know, under Mysensability, I found the MAD training that I'm pleased to say I've delivered to amazing services like Be Well Wigan inclusion team, you know, and they opened it with welcome arms. They thought it was amazing, and they can go forward now, which is part of what I'm doing, just like yourself. I know they can go forward, and that the staff that have had the MAD training can approach any family with SEN and understand what's actually going on with that child, or be able to offer support to that family in their facility. You know, I'm delivering it to How Bridge on the 16th of July. They can see that they need to understand better to be in a position to best support SEN families. Because let's have it right, there's more and more children coming through with a need. You know, so it's not something that's just going to reduce or go away. We have to be in a position that everybody knows what SEN is, and everybody knows within reason. We're not asking them to write the Bible of it, but, you know, just have a bit of consideration. a bit of understanding, because it doesn't, I get really frustrated. It doesn't take a lot to actually support an SEN child if you understand the behaviour. So, like understanding Otis with his ear defenders, he's obviously got sensory needs around auditory. So don't shout in his ear, that's not going to help him. That's a trigger. That's going to initiate other behaviours. They're not massive things that we're asking for people to understand. So after your traumatic experience, which most probably would have ended me up in arrested for assault. I shouldn't say that really, should I? It's not really professional. As SEN parents, you get very sensitive. I'm not sensitive, actually. I just think I've got to a point in life, most probably like yourself, where I can't understand why I'm tolerating this kind of, in this day and age, why am I tolerating this kind of attitude? So after your traumatic experience with Wigan, he got looked after. Hopefully he got looked after, he got seen. That obviously triggered your need to try and change the system, which I think is absolutely amazing. I think you're a true inspiration, Jessie. It's going to be a big battle, but like I said to you when I first met you, I'm up for battling with any SEN parent that wants to make a difference. So you contacted the hospital and said what?
So I went through PALS, and I did originally put it as, as much as all of this is a complaint, I want to work with the hospital. I want to make this right. Lived experience. I said to them, I'm not going to tell them I'm qualified to do their job, but they're not qualified to do mine either. So they need to hear from them parents who are, they've got that experience.
Like myself.
Exactly.
Everything I do is lived experience.
So I did this huge, massive email, and then I got put through to the head of patient experience at the time. We had a really successful meeting. I went in with Otis's mission, I've called it, with all the different reasonable adjustments that I wanted to change. Things like, obviously, the sensory room, but also things like specific training, not just your overall kind of disability, things that really go into it, like you're saying about
my training
behaviours and exactly.
So you can tell them about mine then, because obviously they don't know about that. Because that's what my training is. It goes into the behaviours, because what you see on the surface of an autistic child isn't actually what's going on underneath. So it's trying to educate them in understanding what that behaviour is and actually what they're trying to communicate, and then how you can support that behaviour or that need. So it's not trying to give them a certificate, it's trying to give them a way to identify it, understand it, and then support it.
And I asked for things like visuals, because the only form of communication that was actually happening was verbal. There was no, visuals. Like my little boy, Otis, he prefers photographs to your picture, like your cartoon ones. So I was saying, you need both. You need every option for everyone. And things like for my husband works at a mainstream school, and in his current year there was SEN. So over the holidays before I started, I made something called a little calm cart, and it had things on like visuals on breathing techniques, little fidgets and stuff, all different things like
that.
Like
a toolkit.
On a little cart. So I've asked the hospital to do that. Is going to be in place soon. The calm carts, which have things in that are going to help. So I can't wait to see that.
I look forward to seeing that.
I've asked, they know how much I am involved as well. Like I keep saying, don't, push me out. All these things I've asked for, I want to see, I want to be there. And so different things like that. Obviously the sensory space is massive. That's a must. So went to this meeting, it went successful. I listed down all the things I wanted to see. And then I was invited for a second meeting, which didn't go as well. I was kind of told that we can't make a room just for Otis. I didn't feel like I was being understood.
A room it's not just for Otis. You're blazing a way so that every parent with an SEN child does not have to go through the experience that you had.
Yeah,
I think that's very
exactly.
ignorant.
It was very narrow-minded, and I think maybe it was said and not meant in that way, but it hit me.
It came across
hard.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So from that, I cried a bit.
As we do.
And then it just lit a fire in my belly, like more so than before. And I was like, I will not be told no about this, because it needs to happen.
Yes.
And so I went off, I made a document called Otis's Voice. I spoke to all the hospitals in the area, found out what they were doing in their A&E. I reached out to other parents to find out their experiences, and they all kind of had
the
very
same.
similar things. And then I was asked if, bear in mind through all this time, and I never really mentioned this, but it was constant chasing, like everything is in our life.
I know the feeling, going through that right now.
Yeah, constantly. Where's this up to? Have we done this yet? And there's been a lot of change of staff. So I've been kind of having to re-explain everything kind of with a new member of staff. But basically I was asked to do a film with Otis, I think, because I didn't really go away. They knew I was there for good. So that I was filmed. We went to a lovely centre called All Thrive in Leyland. And he let us use the space, because she said, what you're doing is amazing. And so she let us have the space to ourselves, because I wanted it to be in an environment they could really see Otis,
Yeah.
So he was filmed in there, and I was filmed speaking about our experience. And then more so recently, that was taken to the board of the hospital. So the big boardroom.
Look at you, go get all them.
The executives, the chairman, and walking into that room, I was a bit like, oh, because it's just not me. I like just being in the background of things, but I think when you're a parent to an autistic child, you can't be in the background. No. You've got to keep pushing.
You've got to stand up, haven't you, and be counted, as I like to say, because no one else is going to do it, are they?
No. So from that, I've then had multiple meetings, which is now a group has been made called the Otis Project. The staff that I'm working with currently all seem to be very much on board and wanting to create the change. I feel a lot more positive about it. But for me, I keep banging on about, this room isn't going to fix everything. I need understanding.
No, it's change, isn't it? You're very, after speaking to you now, and like I said, I wanted to save the conversation for now. You've got the same underlying fire that I've got, which, my podcast listeners will know that I set up a parent group at the specialist provision that I trained in to support the parents. That were there, that felt, because it felt very isolating to me to have a child in a specialist provision that was on school transport and, things like that. And within the environment I'm working with, I speak to a lot of parents and offer them support, but I felt like I needed to make change at the bottom, if that makes sense, rather than at the top, to actually affect real change. And that seems to be coming from my training. That seems to be, I do parent advocacy, but that's like a day-to-day supporting parents with any issues or problems they've got, which really, unfortunately, are coming around are coming to me, I should say, from a perspective of a lack of understanding, believe it or not, in education. I don't know if it's a lack of understanding. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of it, why certain children aren't supported the way they should be supported in mainstream school. But that's where the parent advocacy is coming from, an affecting change from the bottom upwards, like yourself. It seems to be coming through the MAD training. Yeah. Because the people that I've delivered it to, I've not just delivered it to Be Well Wigan, I've delivered it to Open Air Bounce, I've delivered it to a local leisure centre, I've delivered it to a football team. The moment they have that and they have that better understanding, for those children, it's a completely different story. They now have access to a service that they didn't have before. Yeah. And I think, just like yourself, for me, that is affecting real change. But in order for it to have a massive impact, I need more people on board. Just like yourself, you need more hospitals on board to look at what they're actually doing with SEN children and what services and what adjustments they're making for that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked to go in, and we're trying to start at some point me going in and speaking to more of the staff, because I keep saying to them, like, you don't know the process of actually getting into that hospital.
Yeah.
Like, to actually get them in there.
Yeah.
And everything that's happened kind of before that. Like, I think us as like parents to autistic children, SEN children, it's just like, it's our life. We just do it. But if someone else sat back and watched the processes and the patience and all the other things that go into just getting out of the door.
Exactly.
And I think that you don't feel that unless someone is in front of you going, look, this is my life. This is how it feels. This is, what we go through day to day. And I know I keep saying it is a job to them. And it gets to the point where, and I've said this to the nurses, sometimes they get a bit desensitized because they're doing it day in, day out. And I just need them to see us and see us as people. And we do need that bit extra time and that bit extra patience and understanding to know how our children, communicate and like just get like through the day.
And that's it, isn't it? Yeah. The thing is it's, and I say this in my training, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't have to cost a huge fortune. Obviously, maybe a sensory room might be a little bit more of a considerable cost, but the reasonable adjustments they can put in place in order to just help that process doesn't have to cost. It's just a little bit of understanding, a bit of empathy, and little bits of resources that can cost pounds, not literally pennies, not hundreds and thousands of pounds. I mean, you're very, like I said, you're very diverse. You're very go get them, very much like me. But it makes me really sad. I'm always sad, me. I always say I'm sad and frustrated. When I think of the parents that I've come across, that I've worked with, that maybe don't have that element to them, that fight. And, they might have 2 or 3 young children at home. A couple of them might have a need, and they need somebody to just go, okay, we can see you struggling. We're not going to make this situation any worse for you than it has to be. That just doesn't seem to exist. One of the things I'm trying to not necessarily fight for, but I do intend to apply a lot of time to, once I can get all, my sensibility to a point where I can shift my focus, is actually mental health support for parents of children with SEN, because there isn't any. And you can find mental health support for every other thing in the world, but you try finding a specific mental health support for a parent with SEN. And you most probably know what I'm talking about, Jessie. Some days, and I'm quite strong, I work within education, I trained within specialist division, I know what I need to do. But even myself as a parent sometimes feel like I'm drowning, because it's just so much. It's just really too much for one person to handle. So you think about, I've got an older one and I've got Harrison, but if I had a couple of young children, that might have had a need, sometimes I don't know how some parents cope, and they need to be able to just release it all, just offload it to someone that's listening and understands. So, there just isn't the right level of support. There isn't the right level of understanding.
No,
there isn't. We all know what it's called now. It's got a name, but it's not, in my personal opinion, I don't think anything's changed.
I think with the hospital side of things, I think I've called it, change to normal practice. Because it's like things like I said about the temperature. So they have an actual underarm temperature.
Yes, they do.
Which Otis still hates it, but it's a lot better.
But it's not as
his ear defenders off. And I mean, there's times after I asked for that, there's times I went and they said, "Oh no, we don't do it like that. We don't use that." But why? Because I'm asking it, because he needs that. And now I know it has been put into place where they're actually asking. They're asking if they would prefer the underarm. And we have been to A&E since, and obviously our experience is completely different.
Right.
We've been asked how I should communicate, how I should, approach him. They've given me the thermometer to put under his arm.
For you to do it,
And I've had messages off people which have made me cry so much, but saying, we went to A&E and it's so different.
And the experience was so different.
And that is, honestly, I can't tell you. I mean, I can't tell you because that is the only reason I'm doing it. It is for our children, not just mine.
Yeah.
And to receive messages like that, because obviously when we went in, people know who Otis is now. So you're a bit like, is this just happening because it's Otis?
No, but you know, because the other people are telling you that they've had the same experience. That's fantastic. I mean, that's why we do it, don't we? At the end of the day, you know, I love going to the open air bounce sessions because she was my very first client. When I launched Mysensability about 3 months later, I don't. It was just a thought process. You know, and when I speak to the parents and just the release it gives them for that couple of hours, and you know, they're all really complimentary and say how fantastic it is, just like yourself. You know, you can tell the staff have had training, and for me, that's what it's all about. It's just giving SEN parents that little bit of relief and support. And you know, we try to take on the world at the end of the day. Bit by bit. I always say that I'm trying to take on the world a little bit by little bit. You know, and if you can get it across all the hospitals, I can get it across anybody that has anything to do with SEN parents, then we're doing a good job. We might actually change the world.
100%.
Yeah. So moving forward, we've got the charity event, haven't we, at Open Air Bounce on the 27th of July at 11 o'clock SEN session. She's put so much on, Sarah. She's amazing. She's put loads of different stuff on, hasn't she? We've got the phone party, we've got sensory stuff, we've got characters. It's going to be an absolutely amazing day. We just need the sunshine, please, God.
I know. I don't even mind sunshine. It just needs to be dry.
Dry. That's it. I don't care whether it's cold. They can wear coats. It just needs to be dry. So tickets can be bought for that, and some of the proceeds are going to Otis's voice, aren't they? Is there anything else that people can do? I mean, you can buy tickets. I should have said that, really, can't you? You can buy tickets at Open Air Bounce on their website. I send out a lot of links on social media for Open Air Bounce. Is there anything else anybody else can help you do to support Otis's voice?
So I mean, the tickets, I've had a lot of people say, you know, I don't have young kids, but we're going to have a little stall there where we're selling things, you know, all for the charity. So I mean, even if you just get a non-bounce ticket and just come just to support us. And there's also a Just Giving been set up as well. So if anyone would like to donate, then that'd be amazing.
So how do they access your Just Giving page?
So it's on my Instagram.
Which is?
Autistic Me.
Autistic Me, okay.
Yeah. And you'll find I'm constantly sharing, you know, the tickets on there and things and all the links. So yeah, that's where you find it all.
Fantastic. Well, Jessie, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I wish you all the best.
You too.
There will be a link on my website to this video. Our very first video. I don't know what it's going to come out like, but you know, it's been lovely talking to you. It really is, and finding out about Otis's voice. And if there is anything at all that I can do to support you, you know I will. I'm right there. And I'll do anything I can to support any SEN parents, anything to do with SEN. You know, I normally say you cut me and I bleed SEN. It's just the words SEN come out of me, literally. So I think we're on the same planet trying to change the world a bit by bit. So 100%. If you're watching this, please support Otis's voice. I'll put a link on my website for it and the session that's coming up at Open Air Bounce on the 27th of July. Thank you, Jess, for joining us. This nerve-wracking very first show. I don't know. I'm on it. You can see my face. I've most probably offended some people somewhere because that's what my mouth just does whatever it wants and my face does whatever it wants. Can't control either to work in sync. But it's been a real pleasure. And I'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Take care, darling. Bye-bye. Bye.